not even the horrific stories. There's countless horrific stories, but just basic stories of cost. Like my friend, Dr. Peter Attia, has this story where he happens to be wealthy, so he can afford it, but he had to take his son to the emergency room, and the son was dehydrated, and the bill was $6,000. They just did a basic test and gave him an IV, a basic thing. And he has really good insurance, and the insurance covered $4,000 of it, so he had to, at the end, pay $2,000 for a basic emergency room visit. And there's a lot of families for whom that one visit for such a simple thing would be just financially devastating.
And you know what? People know that, and you know what they say? I don't feel well today. Something's wrong. I ain't gonna go to that emergency because I don't want a $6,000 bill. What happens if you have insurance? They'll pay 2/3 of it, right?
Yes.
So what happens if you didn't? What happens if you didn't have money? You'd be housed by both ones for the rest of it. So it is a disgusting system. It is an inhumane system. But you know, the insurance companies and drug companies are very powerful. They make a lot of campaign contributions, have a lot of lobbyists, and we already know. But you know, I think the American people want fundamental changes.
So that's another good example of a really popular idea that is not implemented because of the money.
That's wonderful. And I'll tell you that. Not only is it not implemented because of money, it's not even discussed. Right? So I'm saying here, no one disputes it. We are spending twice as much per person on healthcare, right? And yet 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured, and our life expectancy is lower than virtually every other major country. Do you think that might be an issue that we be discussing?
Again, if a single politician discusses it, they get punished for it. So there needs to be a mass movement, and probably, I mean, from my perspective, it has to come from the very top. It has to come from the president. And the president has to be a populist president where they don't care about the parties with the rich people. They just speak out because they know it's a popular message and they know it's the right thing. Speaking of that, you had a historic campaign to run for president in 2016. And in the eyes of many people, mine included, you were screwed over by the DNC as
the Democratic establishment who have controlled that party forever. Not even trust the Democratic Party. You know, you're taking on corporate America, and you're taking on the corporate media, and you're calling this. I have one supporter. I have no governor supporting Illinois. Maybe a few people in the House. But we took on the whole political establishment, and we did, you know, got millions of votes, and the ideas that we brought forth were ideas that they had to eventually deal with in one way or another. If you look at the American Rescue Plan, which I'm proud of that helped write during the midst of COVID, a lot of the ideas that we brought forward were implemented in that bill, and I want to make them obviously permanent.
And you almost won. And a lot of people thought that you would win against Donald Trump.
I think we would have. You know, I think Trump is a very, I think he's a little bit crazy between you and me, but he's a smart politician. And he's appealing to a lot of the anger of the working class people feel. And you know what? Working class people should feel angry, but they should make sure that their anger is directed in the right direction and not against people even worse off than they are, which is what demagogues like Trump always do. So, you know, I think we had, as I went around the country, we have a lot of support from working class people who understand that there is something wrong. And this is an incredible fact. I'm going to ask you a question. Are you ready for this, Lex? Let's go. Here we go. Over the last 50 years, there's been a massive increase in worker productivity as a result of technology, right? Everyone agrees with it. And I don't know exactly what it is. But the worker today is producing a lot more than the worker 50 years ago doing something similar. Is the worker today, in real inflation accounted for dollars, making more money than that worker 50 years ago?
Well, there's a lot of close arguments there, but your point is well taken. It's either the same or a little bit higher or a little bit lower, depending on the statistics. It has not increased significantly, and the wealth inequality has increased significantly.
So you would think that if a worker is producing a lot more, that worker would be better off, would be working lesser hours, etc. That hasn't 50 trillion, trillion with a T, redistribution of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. You got CEOs today making 300 times more than they were then. You've got 3 people on top owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society. So that's why people are angry. And they're worried that their kids will have all the standing living in Maine in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. So there's a lot of anger out there. And I think
if you just look back and had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
Well, by the way, in terms of the takeover of the Democratic Party, we did try. We ran, you know, Keith Ellison is? Keith is now the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. He's doing a great job there. He's done the outstanding change laws in the country. Keith was then a member of Congress. And we ran Keith to become the head of the DNC in the establishment to the President of the United States on down went to his, you know, maybe every sentence. Yeah, what's the alternative? Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump is an extremely dangerous person trying to undermine American democracy. So I can't support him. You know, Hillary Clinton, obviously, his views are very, very different than mine. But that in that moment, you know, that's where politics becomes really tricky. And it ain't easy. And, you know, sometimes you have to do things that you're not really all that excited about. But I think it was right to try to do what I could to prevent Trump from getting elected. And in 2020, I did the same with Biden. We had more success with Biden than we had with him.
Well, there's this interesting story about a long time coming meeting between you and Obama in 2018, I believe. So Ari Rabenhoff, who was a former deputy campaign manager, wrote a great book, I would say, about you called The Fighting Soul on the Road with Bernie Sanders. And he tells many great stories, but one of them is your meeting with Obama. And he said that Obama told you, Bernie, I wish I could do a good Obama impression. Bernie, you're an Old Testament prophet, a moral voice for our party, giving us guidance. Here's the thing, though. Prophets don't get to be king. Kings have to make choices, prophets don't. Are you willing to make those choices? Basically, Obama was making the case that you have to sort of moderate your approach in order to win. So was Obama right?
Look, and again, that's why politics is very, very fascinating. You know, sometimes you can run and lose and you really win if your goal is not just individual power, but transforming society. One of my heroes, you mentioned Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who is one of my heroes. Another one of my heroes is Eugene Victor Debs. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
For many reasons, yes.
All right. Debs, many listeners may not know who Debs was. Debs was a union organizer in the early 1900s, helped form the American Railway Union, ran for president, I think, 5 times, ran the last time while he was in a jail cell because of his opposition to World War I and got 1,000,000 votes doing that. Debs lost badly in every race that he ran in. 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt ran for president. And much of what Roosevelt ended up doing was at least some of what Debs had helped with. Debs helped lay the groundwork for ideas. So sometimes you can lose and win if you're into transforming society. What my views were, I disagree with Obama, is I think you have got to raise consciousness among ordinary people. And when people know what's going on and are prepared in an organized way to fight for change, they can make incredible changes. And we've seen that in recent years. You know, today we take for granted what we have a woman running for president of the United States. That's important. We have had other women running for president. We have women governors and senators. Not so many years ago in the United States Senate, there were 98 men, 2 women. Right? Even before that, 1920 is when women got the right to vote. How did that change? How did women's role in society change? It changed because women and their male allies stood up for us. Gay rights. I, you know, old enough to remember that anybody I knew who was gay, you think they would talk about it? Come out about it? No, they wouldn't. That's changed. We have seen, you know, in terms of civil rights, massive change. Change happens when people at the grassroots level demand it. We talked about health care a moment ago. We will get universal Medicare for all when millions of people make it clear that's what they want. So I believe politics starts at the grassroots level, and that's how you got to bring about change.
to go back to Obama, though. In many ways, he too is a singular historic figure in American politics who has brought about a lot of change. He's a symbol, I think, that will be remembered for a long time. What do you admire most about Obama?
I know him. We're not best friends, but I know him well. I reach out every once in a while. First of all, don't underestimate what it was in 2008 to be the first black president in the history of this country. Uh, and I think few will deny that he's an extraordinarily intelligent guy, very, very articulate, one of the best speakers there is in America. And that he and his family, and again, it's a lot harder than it looks, he and his family for 8 years, his wife Michelle and his kids, really held that office in a way that earned, I think, the respect of the American people, even people listening in different countries. Um, so he deserves it. And again, don't underestimate. I think, years ago, there were people who said a black president in our lifetime, it's never going to happen. It can't happen. It's too racist a country. He did it. And that is a huge accomplishment. And I think, he has had some significant achievements in his presidential tenure. He and I, did disagree on, on, on a number of issues. I think he would tell you his public stance is that, yeah, if you have to start all over again, we would do Medicare for all, single payer. But where we are right now, the best we could do is the Affordable Care Act. Now, we disagree on that. We disagree on other things. But, I think he deserves an enormous amount of credit for what he has accomplished.
And he, like you, also gave a damn good speech opposing the Iraq War before running for president, and that takes courage.
Yes, it does.
But then it also shows that once you get into office, it's not so easy to oppose or to work against the military-industrial complex.
It is very hard, and people do not fully appreciate how powerful the establishment is, whether it is the healthcare industry, whether it's the military-industrial complex, whether it's the fossil fuel industry. These people have unlimited amounts of money. They're very smart lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and they are very, very greedy to do what they want to do.
I have to ask you about capitalism, the pros and cons. So you wrote a book, It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. That is a thorough, rigorous criticism of, I would say, hyper-capitalism.
Yes, that's right.
A certain kind of capitalism that you argue that we are existing in today in the United States. But a lot of people would attribute to capitalism all the amazing technological innovations over the past 70 plus years that have contributed to increase in quality of life, in GDP, in decrease in poverty, decrease in infant mortality, increase in expected life expectancy. So, what are the sort of how do you see the tension, the pros of capitalism and the cons of capitalism?
Some of my European friends, they say, we're in the United States, you're considered to be very radical. If you were here in, France or Denmark or someplace, you'd be kind of mainstream left guy, not all that radical. So this is what I think. I think the best that we can do right now, where we are right now, is to create a society which does two things. It encourages innovation, but at the same time, it makes sure that all people in a wealthy nation have a decent standard of living. In some countries, you look at Scandinavia, and this shocks people because we don't talk about this at all. So in Scandinavia, it has been the case, Denmark, Finland, Norway, for years, that people have healthcare. That's not a big deal. You end up in the hospital, so on. You don't pay them. You have, and this shocks people. In America right now, we have people who get 1 week, 2 weeks off, paid vacation. Sometimes people get nothing. You know that? There are people out there with no vacation at all. In Germany, you get 6 weeks paid vacation and other holidays as well. People are shocked by that. In America, we don't have paid family and medical leave. It's the only major country not to do it. Other countries, your wife gets sick, you stay home with her. Your kids get sick, not a big deal. You get a certain amount of paid family and medical leave. Of course, prescription drugs are far more affordable. So what you want to do is create what's called a social In terms of government playing a role in a civilized democratic society of providing all basic needs, healthcare, education, housing, retirement benefits, yes, that is what we've got to do. Now, does that mean then that the government is going to run every mom and pop store on the corner? Of course not. You want innovation. You want to go out and start a business, produce a product. Good luck to you. Make money. But on the other hand, in terms of even making money, we want you to be able to do that. Come up with good products, good services. But do I think you should end up with $100 billion? No. And you know what's funny? I did an interview with Bill Gates, who's I think the third wealthiest guy in the country, struggling behind Musk and Bezos, and he's only worth 100+ billion, but he was. And I said to him, Bill, he was supposed to ask me questions, and I asked him, Bill, tell me something. You're an innovator with Microsoft and all that stuff. Did you know that you'd become a multi-billionaire? And he stopped motivating me. Nothing motivated me. And he said, no. And I believe he was honest. He said, I love doing what I love programming. When I was a kid, he started doing that. He loved it. He was motivated by it. Do you think that there are scientists out there who are working day and night trying to develop drugs to deal with Alzheimer's or cancer, that they're motivated? Oh, boy, if I come up with this drug, I'm going to become a billionaire. So I think, we want to reward success. Fine. But you don't need $1 billion. We want people to get satisfaction from what they accomplish, the work they're doing, whether it's cleaning the street or developing a new drug. So I think we have gone a little bit too far. And you're right in talking about the book as an attack on, you call it hyper-capitalism or uber-capitalism. But right now, and this is not an American issue, this is a global issue. It's not an accident that Musk is over there in Saudi Arabia talking to the, trillionaire families in the Mideast. These guys are completely in his brain. You got probably not more than 5,000, 10,000 extraordinarily wealthy families who have unbelievable economic power. Over 7 billion people on this planet.
Well, Elon Musk is actually an interesting case because he's investing all the money back into the businesses. So I think there is a balance to be struck, and you just spoke to it, which is we can still celebrate even big companies that are bringing wealth to the world, that are building cool stuff, that are improving quality of life, but we can question um, why is it that the working class does not have a living wage in many cases, and sort of trying to find that balance.
That's right. That is the story. Look, I am no great fan of Elon Musk, especially the role that he's playing right now in Trump's campaign. But is he a brilliant guy? Of course he is. Does he work like a dog? Of course he does. Does he come up with these incredible innovations in companies? Yes, he does. Does he say credit for that? Yeah, he does. But, even in terms of encouraging innovations, I would hope that we are focusing on the important issues. I would love to see great innovators figure out how we build the affordable housing that we need, come up with the great drugs that we need to solve many of the terrible illnesses that plague people. Climate change, for God's sakes. All right, do we need innovation? We're making some progress in this country. Should we do more? What kind of technologies out there can really cut back on carbon emissions? So, I hope we focus on some of the most important issues that impact humanity. But reward innovators, I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem when three people end up owning more wealth than about half of American society.
Maybe you can briefly speak to something you tweeted recently about Donald Trump going to McDonald's and minimum wage, I believe like $7.50. Can you just speak to that tweet?
Look, nothing that Trump didn't invent. It's called a photo op. I've done one or two in my life. So you go to a place, you put some link, and good old Donald Trump, just another McDonald's worker. And anyhow, he was sublime. He did his photo op. Kamala Harris was in North Carolina handing out food to people who were victims of the hurricane. Fine, that's what politicians do. But some reporter asked him, they said, Mr. Trump, are you for raising the minimum wage? And that was a fair question because you got, I don't know how many, but many, many thousands of McDonald's workers and millions of other American workers right now are trying to get by on 9, 10, $11 an hour. Federal minimum wage is 7.25. You have people working in McDonald's right now for sure who are working at 12, $13 an hour. So the reporter said, what do you think about raising the federal minimum wage? And he said, oh, these are great workers. I love McDonald's and so forth. He didn't answer the question. Well, I think that in the richest country in the history of the world, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. That means we should have a federal minimum wage, not solve all the economic problems for working class people? No, it won't. It'll happen. It'll happen.
Since running for president, you've often been attacked, especially from the right, about being worth, I believe, $2 million and owning 3 houses. So, from my perspective, the answer to that is most of your wealth has been earned from writing books and selling those books. And you are one of the most famous politicians in the world, and so your wealth in the context, in comparison to other people of that fame level and other politicians, is actually quite modest. So, what's your response usually to those attacks?
Do I own 3 residences? Yeah, I do. I live here in Burlington, Vermont. We live in a middle class neighborhood, nice house. Guess what? I'm a United States Senator, and I own a home in Washington, D.C., as do most senators. You know, you live there year after year. When I first went to, actually, when I was in Congress for 16 years, I rented all the time. But I got elected. Okay, got a 6-year term. You know what? Let's buy a house. So we bought a house. And guess what? Like many thousands of people in the state of Vermont, I have a summer camp, a nice one, on Lake Champlain. That's it. Now, how did I get the money? You listen. I wrote 2 best-selling books, including this book on capitalism, which was New York Times bestseller for a while, and also another book was a used book. And I make, I don't know, $175,000 a year, and that's more or less, how I became the zillionaire that I am.
I should also mention that sometimes the word mansion is used, and I think your residences are quite modest.
Yeah, normal houses, and they're not, they're middle class houses, they're nice houses.
So when you started in politics, I read you were worth $1,100.
That much?
Yeah, that much. That's right. Has the increase in wealth changed your ability to relate to the working class?
Well, that's a good question. And obviously, growing up in a working class family has been maybe the most singularly significant aspect of my politics. I grew up without money in a family that lived in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York. So that has impacted me. I'll tell you, I don't really give a damn about money. I drive a car that's 11 years old, and a stolen car. The money is my jewelry. It's a solar watch. I'm wearing it. That's about it. I don't have a Rolex watch. Would not be interested in it. But I'll tell you what has impacted me. My wife, who also grew up in a working class family, will tell you the same. We don't worry. You raise that issue. If we have to go to the doctor, if our kids have to go to the doctor, we go to the doctor. Our parents pay tax for it. There was a time I had to worry about how to pay my electric bill. I don't worry about that anymore. So what has happened, that stress, that economic stress of not worrying about a financial disaster, that's gone. And that is enormous. I, maybe as much or more than any other member of the Senate, work hard, not only for, but with working class people. I'm chairman of the Committee that deals with labor issues. We have been involved probably in dozens of strikes all over this country as an picket line. So, I do my best. It's a very easy trap to fall into. You can get separated from ordinary people and their struggles. Not hard to do. I try as hard as I can not to do that.
So sometimes people say, can money buy happiness? I think I agree with you. That worry, sort of being able to fill up your car and not worry about how much it's going to cost, to be able to get food for dinner and not worry about how much it's going to cost. Or even, I've been poor most of my life, and I've been very fortunate recently to have enough wealth to not worry about healthcare, have insurance, and be able to afford an emergency room visit. And that worry is just such a giant weight off your shoulders.
I think you said it all. I remember even and I saw this change in my time. When I used to go and I do the grocery shop, my wife does all the cooking. I do the grocery shop. I used to look at the prices of everything. I do that less now. Now the what costs 50 cents more for this can of stuff. So what? But that's a luxury you have when you don't have to worry about that. And I don't have to worry about it. But your point is, again, to me, I don't like big fancy cars or big fancy homes. Don't go on. My wife will tell you we've not been on a real vacation for God knows how long because I work pretty hard. But the major thing about having money, which is the enormous big book, is just what you said. I don't have to worry. If somebody in my family gets sick, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about putting food on the table. Okay, so that's
Let me ask you about the future of the Democratic Party. So one of the biggest impacts you've had is you've been the fuel, the catalyst for the increase of the Progressive Caucus, the progressive movement within the Democratic Party. Um, do you think that is the future? The progressives, even Democratic Socialist leaders will take over the party?
That is the most important question regarding, to my mind, American politics. One of the successes that we've had, and I'm proud to have played a role in this, is that if you go to the House of Representatives right now, you will see almost 100 members of the Progressive Caucus, led very well by a woman from Washington, RabbiRothschild, who does a great job. You know, it's people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and many others. Many of them are young, often women, people of color, and many of them come from working class backgrounds. So what we have been able to do in recent years, elect a number of strong progressives who represent working families very, very effectively. The struggle in the Democratic Party is between the corporate wing and the progressive wing. And, you know, the corporate wing takes a whole lot of money, sees its salvation in getting a whole lot of money from wealthy individuals and, you know, large corporations, and is not very vigorous, in my view, in representing the needs of working class people. If they were, we would have health care for all. We would have a minimum wage that was a living wage. We would not have a housing crisis. We would not have a tax system in which billionaires pay an effective tax rate that is lower than a truck driver or a nurse. So I think one of the reasons that Trump has had political success is it's not so much his ideas. Most working class people don't think we should give tax breaks to billionaires or worry about the size of, you know, Arnold Palmer's genitalia. But they are angry. People are angry. And the Democrats have not responded effectively to that. So the struggle that we are waging right now is the future of the Democratic Party. Will it be a party of the working class and represent working class issues, whether you're black or white or Latino or Asian or whatever it may be?
What was that comment?
Dominated party. That's the struggle we're in right now.
Would you consider running in 2024? From my perspective, I would have loved it if you ran. I think you would have a great chance of winning not just the primary but the presidency.
I gave it about 5 minutes. And the reason was we have a slogan in the progressive movement, it's not about me, it's about us. And, you know, to have taken on Biden, who, in my view, on domestic issues, has been quite strong, would have really split the Democratic Party and laid the groundwork for an easy Trump victory. And that I did not want to see. So sometimes in life, and I know that a lot of younger people will don't agree with me, but you know, you got to make choices to separate folk. So I strongly supported Biden because I like his domestic record. He's done some good things against a lot of opposition, and I'm supporting Kamala right now. But I'm doing my best to see that a dangerous guy like Donald Trump is not in the president.
And the hope for you is that there will be future candidates that are populist, that are progressive.
Yes.
Let me ask you about AOC. You've become one of the most influential voices for the progressive cause in the United States. You two had a great conversation on your podcast, and in general, you work together. So, what's to you is most impressive about her?
I really like Allison so much. Um, she is a young woman who comes from a working class background. She helped her mother clean houses. She was a bartender in the Bronx, New York. And I'm very proud that my campaign for president inspired her to run. And she ran on a progressive working class program. And she took on one of the more powerful guys, a guy named Joe Crowley, who was pretty high up in the Democratic Party. And she knocked on doors. She had no money. She had a very strong grassroots effort. And I appreciate that. So that's number one. I like what she stands for. She's incredibly smart. And she has that certain charisma that, you know, maybe you're born with it, maybe you don't, I don't know. A couple of years ago, she came up here to Vermont just for some time. She and her partner, Riley, came up. And we were out in the street, and people saw her, and they said, "Oh, Congresswoman," and she just smiled, and she had an approach to people which was beautiful. wasn't totally real. But to be a politician, you got to know how to, you could be a great intellectual, but you can't relate to people. She relates well to people. And so I think both from a personality perspective, from an intellect perspective, from an ideological perspective, she helped create the Green New Deal concept. We need to create jobs. We transform our energy system away from fossil fuel. Strong advocate for Medicare for all, workers' rights. So I'm a big fan of Alexandria.
What do you think is the most powerful, enduring impact she's had on American politics? Looking back, you've been in it for quite a bit.
Well, I don't want to give you a singular answer. I was mayor of the city. I'm proud of what we accomplished here. Proud of my accomplishments as a U.S. senator. When COVID was devastating this country and we had a massive economic downturn, as chairman of the budget committee, I helped write the American Rescue Plan, which put a lot of money into people's pockets. We cut childhood poverty by 40% by providing a child tax credit. We kept hospitals going. We kept colleges going. Kept people from getting evicted. Helped get public health out there. People getting the vaccine. I'm proud of that. But at the end of the day, I think what I have shown is that
That's
the
the joke.
ideas, gets back to the early part of this conversation, the ideas that I am talking about are ideas that are widely supported. So when Donald Trump says, "Oh, Bernie Sanders is a far left," it's like I'm some kind of extremist coming up with ideas that nobody supports. Everything that I talked about, raising minimum wage, health care for all, a tax system which demands the billionaires pay their fair share, those are all popular ideas, but people ignore them. You got to run for president and have 20,000 people come out to your rallies and win 23 states. Maybe those ideas are not so crazy after all. And we've got to entertain them. The establishment doesn't like that. They really don't. They want to tell you, and this is their main, this is how they see it. What they say, Lex, is the world is the way it is. It always will be this way. We got the wealth. We got the power. And don't think of anything else. This is the way it is. You have no power. Give up. That they don't say it like that, but that's really what the intent is. And what we showed is just that. Running an outsider campaign, we took on the Democratic establishment, came close to winning it, and we did win 23 states. And the ideas that we're talking about are the ideas that working class people and young people believe in.
Yeah, you showed that it's possible to win. And that's an idea that will resonate for decades.
And out of that came dozens of candidates now in the House of Representatives, people on city council, people on state legislature who did it.
So we mentioned about the worry of getting sick, the worry of life that many people in the working class are suffering from. But there's also the worry that we all experience of the finiteness of life. Do you ponder your own mortality? Are you afraid of it?
When you're 83, it does come, of course.
All right.
Yeah, of course I do. And
are you afraid of it?
No, I'm not afraid of it. What I am afraid of, I think, is infirmity. I have been, knock on wood, this is wood, I think, reasonably healthy with an exception. I had a heart attack 5 years ago. And what blew me away at first, so my body failed me for the very first time in my life. That was stunning to me. That, suddenly I was in a hospital bed. I have a great deal of compassion for people as we speak who are in nursing homes, having a hard time walking. Maybe your mental agility is slipping a little bit. It's tough. That's what worries me. We're all going to die, and that's that. So I'm not afraid of that, but that aspect of getting older.
Not this horse.
And that does concern me.
That said, your mind is as sharp as any politician that I've ever heard. And also just off mic, I should say that just the warmth that you radiate, and I deeply, deeply appreciate that as a human being. So you still got it. After all that, after all those speeches, after all those houses, after all of it, you just still, the humility and just the sharpness, the wit is all there. So Bernie, yeah, like I said, I wish you would have ran this year, but I also wish that there was future candidates.
Yes, and there will be. Absolutely. You asked about my legacy. The idea that there are wonderful, really wonderful people who have got involved in the political process and are fighting for justice. That's a great legacy.
What gives you hope about the future of this country, about the
sometimes one can become very cynical. But I am lucky in this sense. People often say, I remember in the agricultural area of California, we did a rally, sunset, thousands of people around. You look around the crowd, young people, black and white, Latino, Asian American, huge across the country. Really moving. I mean, I see that time and time again, just on the campaign trail. You see great people, really beautiful people. Sort of become this, but you go out the street, those people, you're able to see things that many others have not. With every state in the country.
Share your optimism and this.
Let's go. There is a growing dissatisfaction with corporate leaders. And not because it's fake news or the reporters lie all the time, that's not but I think people want to hear folks talk about some of these not important
from a man, and I look forward to looking at the fall leaves, walking around.
It ain't quite great relief.
Yeah.
Let's take great support for this.
Thank you so much for listening to Real to the poverty, ruled by reason and a wealth, that in oligarchy. Where the next time. What can we do this long? Why do we wait until after really years ago to start seeing the beginnings of civilization? The following conversation with Graham Hancock, a journalist, author, who for over 30 years explored social policy about ideas and focused in the past. I discussed that as archaeologists talk about respectful in this agreement in history. Our distant past is full of mysteries. And after this is a Let's Begin podcast. Dear friends, here's Graham Hancock. Let's start with a big foundational idea that you have about human history. An advanced, I say perhaps call the Egypt, India, China, Andes, and Mesoamerica. Describe it as a foundational sense of puzzlement and incompleteness in the story that we are taught about our past, which envisages more or less, there have been a few less, because the hunter, it's important to mention that anatomically modern humans were not the only humans. We had Neanderthals from, 400,000 years ago to about 40,000 years ago. They were certainly human because we carry the Neanderthal gene. But then it's thousands interface that a human is anatomically date to about 310,000 years ago. So the question is, what were our ancestors doing after that? And I think we can include the Neanderthals in this song as a model. Why did it take so long when we have cannot actually measure them? Looks like 4,000 years. So long. I would have anatomically modern humans before 50,000 years ago. And then it became 196,000 years ago with the findings in Ethiopia. And then the other pieces, why did it take so long? Why did we consider this 6,000 years ago, beginning to see definite signs of what will become the dynasty of Egypt about the same time? You have the Indus Valley civilization popping up out of nowhere. And by the way, the Indus Valley civilization was a lost civilization until the 1920s, when railway stumbled across some ruins. I've been to Mohenjo-daro, and these are extraordinarily beautifully central cities. Clearly, they're the work of sophisticated civilization. One of the things that strikes me about the Indus Valley civilization is that we find a steatized seal of an individual seated in a recognizable yoga posture. And that seal is 5,000 years old. And the other is Uravadasana, which involves a real contortion of the ankles and twisting the feet back. It's an advanced yoga posture. So there it is 5,000 years ago. And that raises such a thought, how long did yoga take to get to that place when it was already so advanced? Like 5,000 years ago, what's down to this? China, the Yellow River civilization. Again, it's around about the same period, 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. You get these first signs of something happening. But all around the world, we have this sudden upsurge of civilization about 6 years ago, preceded by things like a natural process that would lead to a civilization. Certain ideas being carried down and manifested and expressed in many of these different civilizations. I just find that whole idea very disturbing, especially when I look at this radical break that takes place in story of all life, which was the last great cataclysm that the Earth went through, during the Dryas event. It was an extinction level event. That's when it was. After that, after that, we start seeing this, what I think is the beginnings of the first little step of civilization. We come out of the Upper Paleolithic, as it's defined, the old end of the Old Stone Age, and into the Neolithic. And that's when the wheels are supposedly set in motion to civilization development. But why did that suddenly happen then? And I can't help but for this for a very long while, that there are major missing in our story. It's often said that I'm claiming to have proved that there was an advanced lost civilization in the Ice Age, and I am not claiming to prove that. That is a hypothesis that I am putting forward to others about history, and I think it's worthwhile to inquire into the Dryas was a massive global cataclysm, whatever caused it, and it's strange that just after these first times. So the current understanding in mainstream theology after the Upper Dryas is when the civilizations popped up, the places of similarities, but they pop up independently. Yeah, independently, and by coincidence, those big civilizations that we all remember as the first civilizations, Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley Civilization, China, they all pop up at pretty much the same time. That is.
And now just build up some settlements.
Oh, definitely, yes.
And then there's different people up in the world of the agriculture. Also, there's a first civilization of where people are start using agriculture in the same urban center. That kind of. It seems like there's an argument for everything.
There is no doubt we're seeing evolution progress, social evolution taking place in those thousands of years before new ages. But what's happening now, really, I spent the 1980s investigating this issue of civilization. I wrote a series of stuff. In 2002, what was called Underworld, which was the most massive and most heavy book I was writing, very defensive at the time. I finished up about some years scooping up around looking for structures which offered by local divers to anomalies. By the time that book was finished, I thought I actually walking with I should say that when I finished another section, I wrote a book called Supernatural Meetings with the Extraterrestrial. I kind of the visionary, and that was about the role of psychedelics in the evolution of human culture. And I think that I go back to the lessons, but go back to Happy Turkey, kept off himself, I mean, more and more studies in the 11,000 years from PhD to make this. And I reached the point where I realized I have to get back in water, and I have to investigate this again. And that was a game changer. But it's a game changer for everything. Because Göbekli Tepe, the extraordinary nature, we're looking at a major megalithic, which is at least 1,500 years older than, say, Gigantea in Malta, which was previously the most megalithic site in the world. And this is, of course, a huge information, but from the potential and archaeologists, and this has led to excavation throughout the region. And what they're finding is a whole region going down into Syria and further down to the Valley as far as Jericho, and even across the Mediterranean into Cyprus, is what Dutch archaeologists are now calling the civilization. They're calling it a civilization. It's not a civilization. With the kind of characteristics, bringing circular structures, shaped megalithic that is sometimes not near as much Göbekli Tepe. This Göbekli Tepe now was not the beginning of this process. It was actually, in a way, the entrance. It was a summation of everything that stone civilization had achieved. But what is clear is that this is a period before the foundation of Göbekli Tepe. As far as we know, that 1,600 years ago is the oldest date for Göbekli Tepe. But of course, a lot of Göbekli Tepe is still around, so we can't say for sure about the oldest, but it's the oldest so far. That's good. What we're seeing is that in that whole run, something was motion. It came to motion right about the beginning of the Younger Dryas, and this is where these two dates are really important. The Younger Dryas around the things that begins around 1,800 years ago, and it ends around 1,600 years ago. So Göbekli Tepe's construction date is 11,600 years ago. The final material marks the end of the Younger Dryas, but the beginning of the we're already seeing the spirit of the kind of the full form of Göbekli Tepe, and after the late Dr. who's about a year later, was very generous to me and showed me around something for a period of 3 days. And he explained to me that his ground penetrated radar arms, and they know that there's much more Göbekli still on. So anything is possible in terms of dating the Göbekli. But what we have at the moment is a series of almost circular but not quite circular enclosures, which are walled with relatively small ones. And then inside them you have pairs of enclosures. And the archival part of that site is enclosure D, which contains the two largest archivolts, about 18 feet tall and weigh somewhere in the range of 20 tons, my memory correct. They're substantial, hefty pieces of stuff. It isn't somebody's ordinary feat to be 20 feet tall or to make it, nor is it extraordinary feat to move it. There's nothing magical or really weird about that. Human beings can do that and always have. Besides, the 40-foot magnets is within 200 meters of the main enclosures. So that's not a mystery. But the mystery is why suddenly this new form of massive megalithic pillars appear. And the pillars, what interests me about the pillars is their alignment. And it's a good work that's been done which suggests the enclosure D aligns with the rising stars. And the rising stars are being mapped by the other enclosures, which are all oriented slightly enclosures. It was the work of hunting and foragers, but by the time Göbekli Tepe was completed, agriculture was being introduced and was taking place there. Now you asked how Göbekli Tepe was found. The answer to that is that there was a survey of that pot-bellied hill in the 1960s by some American archaeologists, and they were absolutely looking for Stone Age material from the Paleolithic, and they had found some Paleolithic flints around, so it looked like it was a place to look. But then they noticed sticking out of the side of the hill some very finely cut stone, bits of very large and very finely cut stone. And looking at that, the workmanship was so good that those archaeologists were confident that it had nothing to do with the Stone Age. And they thought they were looking at perhaps some Byzantine remains. But they abandoned the site and never looked at it further. And it wasn't until the German Archaeological Institute got involved, and particularly Klaus Schmidt, who I think was a genius, had real insight to this, and studied Göbekli Tepe, that they realized what they found, that they found potentially the oldest megalithic site in the world. And they found it at a place where agriculture couldn't be established as that's where agriculture, at any rate, in Europe and Western Asia begins. It begins in Turkey and gradually westward.
And yet the understanding is it was created by hunter-gatherers.
It's created by hunter-gatherers. There was no agriculture for hundreds of years ago in Göbekli Tepe. But by the time Göbekli Tepe was decommissioned and was closed down and buried, it was and that was agriculture.
Do you have an understanding when it was turned into a capsule?
It stood from roughly 100 years ago to 8,400. So around 100 years, that community in Latin site was being elected as a site to see agriculture. I'm going to use the word being introduced. We had no sign of it before, and suddenly it's there. And to me, that's another of the mysteries around the Göbekli Tepe. And then the new word that's been used is part of the phenomenon, which is across enormous systems. And the puzzling thing is after Göbekli, there was a decline. It falls down again. And we enter this long process of the thousands of regional belts until we come to Kinsula and Mesopotamia. Actually, one of the things where my observation interesting to see incredibly indigenous in the first place. So I do want to think of archaeology. It accepts the idea of agriculture was introduced by the didn't actually introduce that phenomenon. Without notion of dissemination of should playing to it.
Perhaps you should say if you are history or explorers. I didn't even know this when I was preparing for this. Yeah. 1.9 million years ago. We almost read these and Homo sapiens evolved. And we should also talk about debates on diversity. And then we talk about that it's, I think it shouldn't come from the point of Africa, but there's multiple locations.
The Africa here is really strong evidence. Why? Because we're part of the great evidence as an animal. But there's out there that human beings are deeper. But then there, as rightly said, there would be very early migrations out of by species of definitely Homo erectus and astonishing difference that they undertook. Yes, I think there's in all of humanity. I think there's was around the corner of the next hill, and it goes deeply into it, and I think it's been annexed in its most early adventures. People travel around the world, and then in different parts of the world. I think a lot of the modern human evolution takes Africa, not only.
So I guess the part of the world is given that these explore and take hundreds of thousands of years to know settlements.
That's the big question.
And this is where I think that archaeology is in history as well as history, because again, and again and again throughout the human history. So there are particular, for example, the archaeology of what happens for and you do what happens when I was 4. I definitely it would natural from the door around to the Milky Way. It's a journey along the Milky Way. There it is, challenges the life that a person will determine their destiny by that journey. This idea of the past all there is really found in the Americas, South America, through America, but it's also found in ancient Egypt, in ancient India, in Mesopotamia, the same idea. And I feel that can be a coincidence. I feel that we're looking at this inheritance idea, a legacy that's been passed down from a remote common source to cultures all around the world, and then has taken on a life of its own within those cultures. So the remote common source would explain both the similarities and differences in the expression of these ideas. The other thing, is these numbers that are a result of research efforts. At least I think that's the here, I think it's important to pay tribute to the work of Giorgio de Santillana and her work. Giorgio de Santillana was professor of history of science at MIT, where you were back in the 60s, and her was professor of history of science at Frankfurt University. And they wrote an immense book in the 1960s called Hamlet's Mill. And Hamlet's Mill differs very strongly from the established opinion on the issue of the phenomenon of precession. And I'll explain what precession is in a moment. Generally, it's held that it proves everything, the precession. And the dating on that is not very far, 300 years ago or so. Santillana actually pointing out that precession is much more than that. And they do actually trace it, I think I'm putting it correctly, to some unbelievable speculation. Reading that book was one of the several reasons that I got into this mystery in the first place. Okay, the precession of the equinoxes is results from the fact that our planet is the fuel platform from which the Earth starts. And our planet, of course, is rotating on its own axis, roughly miles an hour. What that is water. Now imagine the extent of the pole here. It's point the stuff of our poles. Because of the pole, yes. Is our optimal position, and sometimes the extent of the North Pole, there is no Pole Star. That's obvious from the Earth. There are 12 well-known constellations in our time, constellations in the sun. Lie along what is referred to as the path of the sun. We're seeing behind it the red sun in our view. And the dilations fall by the path of the sun. Different times the sun will expand around with a little diagonal constellation to delineate ices. And use fish. This is an area of constellations of the recognize this many of them. The key model of the second one is equinox. So it's question what constellation is behind the sun? What constellation is housing the sun at those regions? Right now, in another 100 years or so, it'll be Aquarius. We live in the time of the late ancient Indians in the before that, it was sort of backwards until 5 years ago, you got to get to Leo, then constellation of Leo houses the sun on the spring equinox. This process unfolds very, very, very slowly. The whole cycle, and the cycle repeats roughly every 20,000, the more 25,000 years. Maybe if you mention some scholars, they did have a video talk actually in that area, and to observe it, you really want one because it unfolds very, very slowly. Wait 100 years. The biggest thing about this is the movement in one lifetime, every 7 years, is that movement. It's not possible for this in the lifetime, but it's going to pass it on. And what seems to happen is that some of the cultures are almost unbelievable without the entire process. That is the key risk of which the most important numbers are most but we also have numbers related to the 72 plus 30, 6100, and divided by 2 is 54. These numbers are also found in mythology all around the world. There were 72 conspirators who were involved in killing God Osiris in ancient Egypt and nailing him up in a wooden coffin in the Nile. There are 132,000 in the Ring Vase, 432 multiple in Egypt, and Angkor in Cambodia for an alpha, which his eyes, holding what was that's pretty key. When he is mentioned, he came before him is defined the story of Hazar. 54 sorry, this was 400 is one of the puzzles that we are looking at, and it was passed down and passed from a single common source at the time. That was very, very much around the world. So one of the defining ways that you approach the study of history that I think contrasts with mainstream archaeology is you take this sort of strong symbolism and ancient humans and sort of very seriously. I think it's important to sort of consider what humans have thought, not only distractions out from human that's pretty important. So interesting. It's art. Yeah. The second part. There's no much so that you guys seem to have everything like spending on stars, and you can have a lot of that value is great as that is. And I'm sure from the genes to
was in time as a exploration. Never real, and it's bright, and it's full of light. It's exceedingly interesting. It's not the reason why I'm really confident that the constellations that we now recognise as the constellation of the zodiac were recognised much earlier, because it's hard to miss the attention to say that the sun, over the course of a year, is month by month rising against the background of different constellations, and then it's a much longer process, the process of precession, which takes the journey backwards, and where we have thousands of theories of the ancients that identified the conditions in exact number of days that made Apollonia, but the constellation, expect constellations, other ones higher up in the sky, which were not part of the sun. But we paid attention to what the does know, because especially later in the system of the world. Actually, there's a nice difference on those. It's access to and give this is what we're able to present so much that doesn't have to open the story itself. Words from free like by wise advice. And we other cultures that still nations, other nations, but I think in the history is so loved and what it preserved is to encourage it. And it's done, but it doesn't really tell knows that that's something. As long as it's reflected in the maintain the book, that's the story of the that's what we commit. So I think very seriously. And the other thing is that I don't know, in the press, because of the way many of us in the last going into years, some of course, each year, there's a couple of things, years, but I think it's a good life. I'm told about 7 years ago that I will have a young guy as you think as a woman in general, and yet I think guys sitting and as it's it's an excellent candidate. What's well what people can but not only because they chose it was fun and enormous fun. And submit that every using other technology. That is still found all the world. Just to be the transformation. It's like the local floods on island as we're talking this. I think in Florida is going to affect them to local. They don't see that but that's the argument actually about themselves, experience. The nasty stuff